Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hometown Cable. Our Sunday show this week is on what's going on here, as always, and we're doing older shows, doing newer ones. We haven't done many older than this so far. You're looking at the St. Joseph's Catholic Church in Coopersville, New York. The sign in front says erected in 1844, which means they're celebrating their 150th year in 1994. Very few churches in our areas can boast of that. The Wesleyan Church in West Shazy can boast of that. I think they were doing their 175th or something, but very few, and this is the oldest Catholic church in the area. I'm Bob Venn. Calvin Castine's on the camera, and thanks for tuning in to our Sunday show. And some of the people who are here to talk with us are Shan Moore. Hi, Shan.
Hi, Bob.
And Ed Béchard.
Hi, Bob.
And Father Cote, the pastor here at the St. Joseph Church. And there's another sign up there that says St. Joseph Church, 1935. Do you know that there's two different dates on this, Shan?
Well, I'm shocked, Bob.
You didn't realize that?
No.
We had to come here and tell you this?
That's right. No, actually, there's a good reason for that. The church steeple was struck by lightning in 1934, and the interior was completely destroyed. In fact, the church, as you see it here, is shorter than it was built originally because a lot of the stone was damaged and they rebuilt with what they had.
You mean it was longer? Or
No, it was taller.
It was taller?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, all right. Well, you still got as many seats, though, right?
That's right.
You didn't use anything else. So you rebuilt it in 1935.
Right.
Now, the pastor was not the pastor here in 1935, was he?
Well, he's been here a long time.
He's been here a long time, but not that long,
Not that long.
Father Cote, when did you come to Cooperville?
July 25th, 1980.
You've been here 14 years. Well, you found a home?
I found a home.
And you didn't live too far from here. As I remember, you lived right there in Champlain at one time when you were growing up.
That's right. Back in 1929 through 1934.
Okay. And then the church burned. You said you're getting out of the North Country and you moved to Plattsburgh.
That's right.
Is that what happened?
That's what would have had to happen.
What was your father doing in Champlain? I know, but those people don't know.
Well, he was a baker.
Had a bakery called the American Bakery.
The American Bakery. In fact, you gave me beautiful pictures on that some time ago.
Yeah, gave you a sign that says American Bakery in Champlain, New York.
That's right.
And Ed Béchard, of course, Béchard? How do you...
Béchard.
Béchard.
In French, it's a French name, but some people call it Bichard.
Edouard, they call you too?
Oh, anything. You can call me anything, no matter.
As long as they call you to dinner, huh?
That's right.
You were brought up not very far from here also.
Just on the road from here, the end of the road here, and I lived here all my life, and I moved far away, not too far away in Kings Bay.
Uh-huh. Now, you're the son of...
Alderic.
And?
Roselma Tatro.
Tatros and Béchards got together? You're related to everybody in Rouse's Point, Cooperville?
Mostly Coopersville.
Well, all right. Well, now, are you active in this project, too? You're going to be active in
this? Yes. She asked me to do something for the church. We come to church here, and I like this little parish because I was born here, baptized here, confirmed here, except I wasn't married here. I was born in Saratoga. So my roots are here.
Were you down at the races and met a girl there and got married her right there? Is that what happened?
I found a filly in there.
You found a filly, and you won the race.
Yeah, that's right.
Listen, right here to the left, to the north, is the beautiful cemetery here at St. Joseph. And who does your cemetery? Keeps it so nice?
Walter and Helen
Walter
LaValle.
and Helen LaValle keep it nice like that. Beautiful. And across the road is the old cemetery.
That's right.
Correct?
Which, Bob, is the site of the original St. Joseph's Church.
Was
right across the street.
Was right across the
Where
street.
the statue is.
Right where the statue is.
It was evidently a log building.
And then when was that done? When was the church originally?
Around
16 something.
Well, the 1816.
16. That's when the parish was started here, so to speak.
That's
and
right.
that's when the first one.
And we had a mission priest, a Father Mignot, who would come to say Mass here.
Out of Quebec?
Yes, he was from Chambly, Quebec.
Uh-huh.
And the church burned down one day when the Mass was over and the stove caught fire, and they rebuilt it again. And that was in 1823. And then the population grew in the area with Irish immigrants and French-Canadian immigrants who were escaping the rebellion up there in Quebec, and they decided they needed a real church. So that's why this one is here today.
Okay. You know, many years ago, Ed, you didn't have to go to Saratoga to find fillies or to dance either, did we?
No.
If I remember, right at the end of that cemetery right up there, there was a nice long building. That was your church hall.
The church hall. When the first church hall was in Coopersville, upstairs over that store, that was a store downstairs, and the hall was upstairs, and that burnt when Mr. Laboud owned it. And when it burnt, Father Garin made ice cream picnics and card parties and whatever, and he got enough money to build the hall, and behind there's an old house. And he built the hall there. Now it was just a summer hall.
Yeah.
Not, it was a winter.
But I'll tell you, there was a lot of dancing, a lot of music in that hall.
Every Saturday night, the Father Garrett used to have the two sound boys come down and play the violin, and they had a square dance. Like.
Yep. And it was
The reason why they tore it down was because the land was only leased.
I see. Now you're going to get on camera here. You're going to get you on camera, Hal. That's one of those great. Listen, I'm going to tell you right now. You can just. All right, you did it.
I didn't know about that until a couple of years ago. That the land was, because I always wondered why they never fixed it up, because it was in sound shape.
It was in leased land, huh?
It was on leased land.
It belongs to the church.
Huh?
It belongs to the church.
Not the land. Not at that time.
Well, I don't know.
You as father, right?
Father said, I don't know. He
Father
said,
wasn't here then.
now, you know, talk about your cemetery for a minute here.
The Polands owned it.
The Polands that used to be
Well,
over there.
the very
The healthy
first.
girls.
This is St. Joseph's has the very first deed recorded in Clinton County for the sale of land for a Catholic church, 1821, and the family that owned the land, who sold it to the church, was the Paulent family, which became the Poland family, which the Antoine Paulent was one of the very first settlers after the Revolutionary War. And so there's your Poland connection.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that under the altar proper, there are several people buried.
Well,
Yeah,
that
here.
is vicious rumor.
Well, I
We
understand.
can't prove.
You
well,
can't
we
prove
can't.
it.
We don't have any sound information.
Well,
on
I
that this
understand
time.
that there are 6 people, and I have seen in print somewhere who is buried there. I understand one of the Asselins is buried
Really?
there, and a couple others I've heard. But let me check my sources on that again.
Yes, when they redug the cellar to put a new church, they unburied some of the coffins. Then reburied them farther over so the cellar is not dug up again.
Okay.
There was a priest buried in there,
Supposedly
Yes.
2 priests,
and some people.
and
Yeah.
Okay.
there's some information I found recently that seems to indicate that Father Lepic, who was one of the priests buried beneath the church, that his remains were removed
Well, they
at
were
a later date.
All right. Now, you know,
Father Dugas evidently was buried there, but
Okay.
we don't have any. Father, you don't have any records that say.
now we are very indebted to Cooperville, we in Champlain, because it was because of the priests in Cooperville who used to come down to Champlain and say Mass occasionally that they started the church in St. Mary's.
That's correct.
At St. Mary's
Yeah.
Parish, about 1860. All right.
I would say.
Father Francis. How do you say his last name? No.
No.
Van.
Oh, Vendenha?
Right.
Yes, yes.
Father
And then-
Francis he also started the church at Centerville, which is now Morris Forks, and covered both the cities of Iona and Altona at the time. So he was credited with several churches besides that.
We're going to go inside and talk, but before we do, we've asked you a couple more questions. Why were we invited here? What is happening except for a celebration? What's going to happen? I understand you're involved in and it's not going to be an article in the North Countryman, it's not going to be in the North Country Catholic, but what's it going to be? You're doing something.
We are writing a church history book. The parish council is sponsoring the project. Ed is modest. He's a member of the parish council.
Okay.
And so we've been doing a great deal of research, talking to a lot of the older residents and digging up old pictures and information, which we have to thank you in part for, Bob. The book should come out in the fall sometime, and we're hoping that everybody will take a look at it, because it's amazing how people here are connected to people all over the county.
All right. And one more thing you've had in the papers I've seen, if there's anybody out there with any pictures of any kind that she might be able to use to contact you
Yes,
at 298
5568 Also about the hamlet of Coopersville, because we're trying to incorporate some of the history of the hamlet. And so anybody who has information, we are looking for things on loan. We'll be happy to take very good care of them and return them.
And don't forget, put your name down if you want one of these. I don't know how many you're going to make. Do you know how many you're going to print yet?
I don't think we've reached a firm conclusion on that. We are taking orders now. There's going to be a memorial page in the book. For $5, you can have the name of a loved one immortalized
All
on
right.
the page.
Question,
Yes.
loved one. My mother and father are both from Cooperville here, and there were two of them. Is that $10, or can I put Mr. and Mrs., or what do I put, Betty and Lyman? What do I do?
No. What we're doing is we're asking for a donation. They put the number that they want of their loved ones for $5 a memorial, and then $5 for the book besides. So it's really $10 total if they also want the book. And we're not really stipulating how many names have to be on.
All right.
Although,
That's right.
Okay, so I can put my Betty and Lyman Castine.
Yeah.
I certainly want that.
Then,
And
while I think of it on that pictures and that, we're looking for a lot of pictures, especially those of the old log church across the road.
if anybody has
Somebody
it.
should have some of
And,
that.
and also, we don't have a picture. All we have is a very faint newspaper picture of the original rectory, which burned in 1902. And we've had some really
You've had
interesting.
players here, haven't you? Yeah.
Well, here's another one for you. There have been some interesting activities here in relation to the weather. We don't know how the rectory burned. I'm hoping to dig that up in old newspapers. But recently, a woman named Phyllis Wells from Plattsburgh, who's compiling a book on all the churches in the county, called me because she saw an item in the paper, and she said, how would you like a picture of St. Joseph's when the steeple fell off and fell through the roof? Well, nobody seemed to remember that around here. She didn't know when it happened or why it happened. And so thanks to a journal which was given to me, a transcribed journal by Peg Barcombe, transcribed this journal, which was written by Charles Hancock, a former resident of Coopersville. He had an entry in 1904, which told how there was an awful windstorm on February 28th, the snow was blowing and the wind blew so hard that the steeple fell off and fell straight down through the roof.
On the north side.
All right. And that was what,
So,
1904? 1904, all right. You just find that in the papers now, huh?
Because people are kind enough to pick up the phone and say, I've got
Okay.
something you might not have, and we
Right.
would like to have more of that
Yeah.
happen.
I just brought her the picture I had, a postcard that says that P. Waterhouse, Waterhouse, was a blacksmith in Cooperville, and we know nothing about that. And if you have any recollections or know anything about a P. Waterhouse, we'd like to know about that too, right?
We sure
We'll take a
would.
short break and come right back. We're standing in front of the St. Joseph's Catholic Church in Cooperville, New York. Or as they used to say, St. Joseph's R.C. for Roman Catholic. They always used to put that in the old days. And these people here are from the old days. We'll be right back. Of course, when we're in Cooperville, I feel like I'm coming home because I was brought up here my last 2 years of high school and while I was going to college on the Stetson Road. And this statue, and this base used to be on the left front. And I used to sit in the left front and I'd read these names at nearly every Sunday. And what used to get me was, look at the ditto marks for the base yards. Look, there are 12 or 13 sets of ditto marks for all the base yards. There's the Jeanette, spelled differently, the Dumas, Anderson, then a whole bunch of base yards, all women because this is to Our Lady, and Mrs. Charles, that's Patterson, the Ducharmes, the Paulette, I guess that's the people that we're talking about, later became Poland, Matot, Matottte, that was dropped, the Dussaults, Lapointe, Forget, Mousseau's, Larocque, different spelling now, Landry, the Asselin, Mrs. Charles Asselin, that's now known as Ashline, the Brousseaus, that's probably spelled different, Lapierre's, Beaucaire. Beaucaire can be spelled several ways, and Mr. Theodore Bidard on the bottom. That's just some of the names here, and it's just interesting because of the ditto marks. I think you just don't...
It's interesting for another reason too, Bob. All those women had men's first names.
Well, back then, that's right. There was no such thing as a lady's first name. And, of course, the Cooperville Church has always been a center point in our whole area. It was a mission church. We'll talk about that later with Shan and Father. But it was a mission. Many people came here who were in the area just to see the old mission church. And Father Brisson, we'll talk about him a little bit later. But I guess this stays here now in the, we call this the rotunda. What do we call this? Just the vestibule out here. And there's some more on the wall over here, some more plaques and names to enter. Of course, you're getting the west wind when you come in this front door in the wintertime. The west wind just comes right straight in here. It's cold. And this break gives you a little wind break. You see there are people here now talking with Father. And the paint buckets, of course, this is not normal. They're getting the church all repainted for the big celebration, I guess. It was time to paint. Okay. And who's doing your painting?
Somebody from Plattsburgh.
The Plattsburgh group?
Yeah.
The Edwin people in Plattsburgh.
Okay.
And he's got 4 men working with
And you're
him.
painting everything inside?
Painting outside and inside.
Outside too?
And,
Okay,
and
all the
the
trim.
been completed.
Well, not
Okay.
quite.
No, oh.
All right, still working on that. All right, let's just look inside here. I guess, Calvin, is going to be a switch in your light. Okay, you want to? Yeah, go ahead, Edward. Show us what this is, and we'll look at this. This looks like it's older. Here's 100th anniversary. Go to Joseph, the centenary of the present St. Joseph's Church. The St. Joseph Mission has been established since colonization. Centenary Drive, 1944, and the parishioners and friends who made donations. And what does this say in French, Father? Je me souviens. What's that mean?
I remember.
I remember. I didn't remember that.
20 base shards on there.
Who is on there?
20 base shards.
20 base shards on this one. 20 base shards. No. I think they would just put the Bayshard clan and give one little donation. And here we go again. These are the priests?
Yeah, the pastors.
Oh, the pastors who have been here over the years. There's never been, they don't have assistants in Cooperville, never did?
No.
No, you have one. And these are the people over the years. And the last one here in 1961, Father Cyril Rapin. Rapin?
Yeah, he's the one that really prepared the plaque.
Okay.
See, and then when I came, I decided to add.
Oh, you've added them here. Yes.
All the pastors that took possession of this place for.
Yep. There they are, right there.
Since
Very
Father
nice.
Rapin, till
Very,
that
very
time.
nice. And are these for saying Mass well, Father, up here, the trophies you get?
Not quite.
Not quite. You had a great parade. You had a...
Back in 1976, when they had the bicentennial of the country, they had a mini church built, and it was in a parade, and it won all these trophies.
Uh-huh.
And then when I came, I put it back into the parade, and I got at least 2 more.
2 more, yep.
Trophies in
yeah.
there.
Very nice. And this is a lot of history right here in this one corner. And if you come to St. Joseph's Mission Church, I guess we still call it that, make sure you stop in. And if you see Father, give him a shout, and you'd be glad to show him around, wouldn't you?
I always do when I'm in.
Very proud. And we'll be seeing Father Cody while in Champlain a little bit while our pastor is on vacation, won't we?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Bob is out front visiting right now, so I've grabbed the microphone. And Father Cody, one of the things that when I used to come here as a child, my parents would often come here. My mother was from Kings Bay, and this was her home parish. And although we lived in Champlain and the Ridge Road, we often came here when I was a youngster. And that big sign over the altar always stuck out in my mind, and the one in the center always made me think of Eat at Joe's.
I guess you could say that.
But that's French, Latin, or Latin, French, and English.
French, Latin, and
French,
English.
Latin, and English, right.
So they all say the same thing. They're Allez à Joseph, Ite ad Joseph, and Go to Joseph. So it's all the same thing, only in those 3 different languages.
And it has nothing to do with Eat at Joe's, right?
No, except that I guess you do get fed spiritually and whatever too here at Joe's.
And what's happening inside here? They're repainting all the walls, and
We're repainting the walls, ceiling, and wainscoting. I hope everything else is going to be done, yes.
you got a target date?
No,
When it's done, it's done.
that's right. That's right. As you can see, you can show them the Stations of the Cross are all off the walls. And when we get done, well, we'll put them right back, of course.
Of course, it's easy to tell where they belong right now, but once they're painted up, you won't be able to tell where they go.
No, that's true, isn't it? But I think the holes will probably still show. Oh.
We moved inside. I was told there was going to be a dinner in here, but there's no food prepared, so we're going to go right on with the program. Well, we have a new person that joined us just to my right, and his name is?
Chud Fozier.
Chud Fozier. I saw him come in. I was about 5 minutes out there, and then I said, I've seen that man, and it's been a long, long time, Chud. Graduated from our Northeastern? No, Champlain Central. What year?
Yep, 1951.
Okay, and I made a mistake. Where are you from? Right here in Cooperville?
Right here in Cooperville. Yep.
And who was your dad and mom?
Mr. and Mrs. Ephraim Fozier.
Ephraim Fozier, right here in Cooperville. As a matter of fact, I was introducing him to Calvin. Calvin said he never met him. And I said, this is Calvin. He said, well, fine. And then I said, this is, remember Carl Castine? He said, yep. I said, this is his son. And tell us that little story you just told us. Stevie, how do you know Carl?
Well, when I was a young kid, I was going to be any more than 8 years old. He and Lionel Trudeau and a couple other guys, they come pick me up one night and brought me to St. John's and give me a treat with a wrestling match. And I think I was scared all the way through it.
You thought it was real, huh?
I thought it was real.
Of course, Lion Trudeau, Calvin's uncle, was a great wrestler here in his own right, you know, and he didn't wrestle that night, though.
Well, no, he didn't wrestle that night, but we used to see him in Ross's Point at the fairs every now and then, and he used to hold his own.
He did?
Yeah.
All right, you know, we didn't mention before, we talked with Shan Moore, but we never asked who, as a matter of fact, Calvin asked me to ask you because of the statues out there. It's always Mrs. Theodore so-and-so. You are Mrs. Brian Moore, or shall I call you Shan?
You can call me Shan or Suzanne, same person.
All right.
People get confused
Yeah,
because
well,
I have two names.
Okay, tell us who you were. Tell us your maiden name and where you're from.
I'm from Shazy. My maiden name is Brown. My parents are Ronnie and Dee Dee Brown from Shazy. Ronnie, retired postmaster from that large community.
Yeah.
What else you want to know, Bob?
That's good. Well, you married who, Brian?
I married Brian Moore from Rouse's Point, and we coincidentally live in Ephraim Fozier's house on the corner.
That's right. And I was just noticing today as I went by, maybe it's been done for a while, your porches look great. All been finished up. Looks great. The house is coming along very well. It's been a labor of love.
Yes, it has. We wanted to retain a lot of the original character of the house. That's why we bought it to start with.
Yeah, been a long time since it's been like that, huh?
Oh, well, when my grandfather lived there, they kept the house and the properties pretty neat, and over the course of years and time and everything else, it deteriorated quite a bit, you know, and to nobody's fault.
But of course, even people deteriorate in time, like you and I.
Well, I noticed that because I you know,
in a mirror, or when you look at me, which is it? You notice it.
Well, I had to ask Eddie. What's that guy? He said, Bob, then.
All right, see, it's not all just church. We're talking about Cooperville, and when you think about Cooperville, there's a lot of nice people here, and it's a community that's been here for a long, long time, and of course the center of this community always has been St. Joseph Church. And one of the things that Chudley brought is a picture of the interior of St. Joseph's Church, and on the top, I can always remember that, 3 times it says, go to Joseph. One in Latin, one in French, and one in English. Ete ad Joseph, alle ad Joseph, and the other one is go to Joseph. And kneeling down there is the Reverend Father Brisson. First name?
Hermenegildo.
One of 3 or 4
4.
brothers, and he was here for many years.
1937 to 1954.
17 years. His brother was in
Plattsburgh, and then Shazy.
Shazy, yeah. Where Father Gardner is now retired.
Yes, he was there before you went to.
No, I'm thinking of Father Gardner's retired in Shazy. Nothing to do there, right?
No, nothing to do.
Nothing to do there. We won't tell we said that.
I'll wait till you hear this from me.
All right.
You won't sell Father's house anymore.
We did a story with Father Gardner there, and very nice. I stopped and saw him a while ago. He was doing.
Go ahead. Say like Calvin just said.
What did he say? He was staying at.
No, you won't sell Father's house.
Yeah, when I came back from vacation once, and there was a sign on my yard.
Oh, you were going to sell your house.
And it had for sale, and then written another sign over it, sold.
That's right. He told us about that. Father Susie and Father Gardner, they had a real estate called Gardner and Susie or something. They had it on their hats. Didn't they have a hat? Yep. Susie and Gardner Real Estate. Did you believe it by any chance?
Why not? I have to tell you something too while I'm thinking of it, and while we're on camera, if you want, is I remember back in the late 30s when we were moving in living in Plattsburgh, and we used to go see our relatives in St. John, Quebec. We would come along here 9B, and I would see the big sign there at the corner where Shan Moore lives in that area, and it would say St. Joseph's Mission Church. And I used to look at it from the field, but I never dreamed that I would ever become pastor here at that time, because it was way too young to even think that I was going to be a priest even. But I had the desires at that time, of course.
Many things like this happen that we look forward and when we think back later and we never realized, you know. I'm sure you went by this house on the corner many, many times.
Yes, and I found out after we bought the house that my great aunt Gertrude Ramsey used to come to that house many times to help Mrs. Fosier lay the table for the guests that they had, and she just loved Mrs. Fosier, she said, and it was nice to find that we had a connection with that home well before we ever thought of living there. So life is strange, Bob.
Sure is. Now we're back in the sacristy, and been newly done over. Did you do this over, Father? Was it like this when you came? And
it was like this when
Father Rapin did it.
Father Rapin, all right. And all right, what else do you have, Chudley? Here's a picture right after the cross was put up in that new section of the cemetery. This says here September 10th, 1944. Picture was sent to Father Brisson by Mrs. Lafalce, Lafalce, September 10th, 1948. Excuse me, 48. That was done. And here is the Christmas time, the crib at the Coopersville Church. And the beautiful altar that they had here. Things have changed now. This is when the priest used to stand with his back to the people, right? And I think I miss that in a way, because it's the way I was brought up back then, and I didn't know what he was saying, you know, because he was saying it in Latin, but there was a mystery to it that that I enjoyed to some extent. All right. What else, Ed? Where are we going now, Chen?
Let's talk about the fire in 1934.
Okay.
I guess I'm the one to start.
Okay.
It evidently lightning struck the steeple one very hot day in 1934, and I was just recently given a picture of the church after the fire. It's very small, so I don't think
he probably can bring it up here.
Okay, I'll get it in a second. The fire departments came from all over to put out the fire, and I was speaking to Omer Carpenter of Shazy. He gave me the picture. He was saying that a big LaFrance truck, almost brand new, was one of the first to the fire. Do you remember this, Eddie, at all?
Yes, Champlain fire truck came down first, and they ran behind the cemetery, behind the hall, where the hall was, and to get some water to start pumping, and it ran out no gas. So
Ran out of gas?
ran out of gas, no gas in the truck, gasoline. So by then the fire, first of all, the priest went around and calling the parishioners that the church was on fire. So he called my house. My father went over, and there was a fire extinguisher down, and he went up in there and tried to put the fire out. But the fire extinguisher ran out, but there's just a little bit more fire left, so he had to come back down, and it kept on burning and burning. It was burning very slow, and then the fire truck come, and they couldn't do nothing. There's no gas. They had to run after some gas and this and that. By then the fire kept going, and then fortunately all upstairs was on fire. The upstairs between the ceiling and the rafters of the church was all on fire. Then the fire was come down slow, so that's what burned. All the upstairs, the floor didn't burn, but it was all messed up with water and everything. So they gutted the whole church right out.
Do you remember when?
Oh yes, I remember.
You realize, Chudley, it's only the older people that's not like us that remember this. He's one of the older people here, right?
Well, there's only one thing I can say is
Yeah.
that that morning after the church burnt, seeing that everybody was so close, Father Guerin went down to Alphonse's store that morning, and just a little kid. I was only 4 or 5 years old, and I was talking to him, and the first thing I said to him, and it didn't go over too good, I said, "Father," I said, "wasn't that a hell of a fire you had last night?" And you know, I must have cracked up half of Coopersville saying that, because they never forgot it, because Father Guerin was a very strict priest. And right off the bat, I got the feeling I said something wrong.
Now tell him about your sisters that saved the Holy Eucharist.
Yeah, well, during the fire, or before the fire, probably Eddie remembers that, one of my sisters, or Norma, which was Norma Fozier, it's now Norma Coyle, was up with Father Brisson up here at the house when the church was burning, and she saved the Holy Eucharist out of the church.
She did, yeah?
Yeah, during the fire. Yeah. You remember
Now-
that?
Yeah, she did. She's the one.
Yeah.
She's the one.
You know, when you talk about big cities and things, and you take little communities like this where people, here's how close it was. You got the sister saving the Holy Eucharist here, and you're telling Father Garrett about the hell of a fire and all these things.
It was close.
Everybody knew about this. So what happened to Chudley Fozier after he graduated from Champlain Central?
Well, I went into the Navy for 4 years, and after I retired from the Navy, I started working for IBM, and I was there for a total of 38 years.
In Essex Junction?
In Essex Junction. I was transferred there from Poughkeepsie, New York.
Uh-huh.
And in 1956, I married Claire Caron from Ross's Point, which has been very good to me over the years, to give me 4 beautiful daughters. Yeah.
And at least one beautiful granddaughter I met.
Oh, yes.
I met her out front here.
5 beautiful granddaughters.
And any grandson?
4. I don't even know how many granddaughters I got.
You got any grandson?
One grandson.
See, one of those is a boy. You never realized.
One boy and 3 girls.
I suppose your dogs are female too, huh?
No, we don't have one.
Now, can we add a footnote to the Fozier history? In 1966, Norma gave a gift to the church, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
In your mother's memory?
All right.
Well, the chimes that are here at the church was donated in memory of my mother.
Very nice. Yep.
Yeah.
Was your mother from Cooperville originally too?
Yeah, she lived on, when she married my father, she lived on the Ridge Road. And she was a La Valley girl.
Oh,
yes, a La Valley girl.
Yep.
And she met my father at when my father bring down the milk to the creamery here in Cooperville. From my understanding, that's where she met my father.
You know, when we were reading out front that with all the Bayshore names, and I read that name Forgette, Forgette, I was told very quickly afterward that I either had to correct that or I'm dead. and it really was your mother, right? And it was
Fozier.
Fozier, Fosher. They spelled it.
Yeah.
But was that the French spelling?
Well, I was reading the old deed of the house that the Moores live in now. They brought over for me to read last night, and they have the Fozier name spelt 4 different ways. You can pick any one you want, but I guess we stayed with Fozier.
Well, Shan will do that. If you've read some of the articles in the paper, she does have spellings different ways at times.
Yeah. Well,
that's look at the look I'm getting. Look at
They're
that.
called mistakes,
Don't
Bob.
You could have said it was deliberate.
It's not on this map. One of the maps I have says.
It shows this here.
You show that one. No.
This is a map of the town of Champlain in 1869, and Cooperville is on the lower, just off center, about 3 inches from the bottom. You see the big name Cooperville, and it says post office. I guess there was a post office here at one time.
Yeah,
It was in the
post office. though.
Post office. You had a railroad station.
Railroad station, milk creamery, blacksmith shop.
Yep, there was a racetrack.
Here's the larger map of Coopersville.
Okay.
That same book.
Okay.
It's called the Fazette Hotel on the corner. Which maybe
That's where you are now?
Yeah.
The Facette Hotel, this is north, is up at the top, of course. And there's the racetrack off to the right. You can see that, a race course it's called. I think it was a half mile, 1 mile.
I think it was a mile.
A mile.
They say they cut the racetrack in half when the train came.
Yeah, when the railroad DNH went through, it was a mile racetrack. When
Yes.
DNH went through it, half of it, they made only a half a mile racetrack.
Right. You remember talking with Peg Barcombe, and Peg, you can correct me on this, but The train never went to Rouse's Point when it was running north and south. It went to Moore's. Around 1850, it started going east and west, and then Rouse's Point didn't have a north and south until about 1875 when they branched off from West Chazy and came through Chazy, and that must be about when they cut through. And in the early 30s, they decided to close the passenger station here in Cooperville, and they wanted to close the regular commercial station too.
And when they closed the railroad station, the people could walk up to there, and the train would stop and pick them up. My father told me one time that Solomon Ribideau and his wife, they were running, but Solomon was an awful big man, and she got to the railroad and to the car, and the conductor was waiting, and Solomon was running down behind, but Solomon got tired and he stopped. He started to walk, and then he flagged the train. They left him. She didn't get on. She stayed right there. But next day they were there about half an hour ahead of time.
Now, the train station was over behind your father's area,
Yes,
huh?
yes. It was behind there, and like the grocery store people, there was plenty more. Every day my father said he used to take his wagon and his horse and go and get wherever he needed, because there was no trucks on the road, even the spool of thread. He used to go get the railroad straight and bring to the store, anything he wanted, because there was no trucks on the road. So everything came by railroad, so it was very handy. And then when they built the overpass, the railroad bridge used to open up and let barge canals, boats go through, and same thing with the Route 9 used to open up. And the man used to open up with a crank, he used to crank by hand, and the boats go through. And one time the train went in the river there.
Oh, yes, it crashed in there. It was open and they didn't know it. It kept right on coming and went down.
Well, what happened is that the train started from Rouse's Point, and the engineer had been drinking. And the fireman didn't want to get on because he said he's not able to take care of the train. Oh, nothing's going to happen. Get on. So anyway, he got on. And when they were coming to Coopersville, Northeastern was staying near the track, the bridge was open, so he grabbed out, and Northeastern was the train section man, foreman. Grabbed a handful of cinders and threw it at the window of the train, and the engineer jumped off the train just as they were ready to go in the plunge in the river. The fireman stayed on, he got killed. He went right in the river and died. Yeah. And then the train that was mostly loaded with cattle train. And then the cars opened up, some cattle swim out, others would drown. And when the train stopped, the caboose had about 2 more cars to go in. The caboose went in, and they didn't know nothing about it. They looked out. They didn't know.
You have pictures of that?
Eddie, which priest took the pictures of the, do you know?
There's a priest of Coopersville gives the last rites to the firemen.
This is
Now, what this picture here, you can see a diver dressed to go down. It's a couple days later. They couldn't find the body. According to the Charles Hancock Journal, they couldn't find the man who was killed in this train accident, which was in the early part of the century. I'll check the date in a second. And they got this diver to go down and find him. And this picture, I hope will show this. Eddie had these pictures for many, many years. They're pulling the engine out of the water.
Right. Who was this Hancock that this is written about?
Hancock? He used to own our farm. It was Hancock and there was 2 men.
Yeah, Bernard Yale?
Yale, Mr. Yale. Hancock and Yale used to call our farm. Hancock and Yale. And he used to live there, and he used to take care of the depot and take care of the bridge, open up the bridge. When the boat come up the river, he blows his whistle, beep, 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 and you go out there and open up the bridge.
You had a whistle that went beep, beep, beep?
On the boat.
You're a bad whistleblower.
Well, that's what it went.
It was beep, beep, beep. Huh? That could wake you right up.
Otherwise, he wouldn't open the bridge. If you didn't blow your whistle, the bridge would stay closed. That's how they communicate with each other.
Okay, we're in the sacristy in the rear part of St. Joseph's Church in Cooperville, New York. You're watching What's Going On Here. I'm Bob Venn. Father Cody, Chudley Fozier, Ed Bashar, and Shan Moore just left to find another picture. Calvin Castine on the camera. And thanks for tuning into Hometown Cable every day. And of course, especially on Sunday when we have our What's Going On show and showing you what's happening in the North Country. As we get back into talking about the church, you can see the steeple is gone on this picture that you're seeing. Tell us about that bottom picture right there, the picture that he has.
That's a picture taken the day after the fire in 1934 when lightning struck the steeple. The damage doesn't look too bad, but evidently the interior was very badly damaged.
And then water, like you say, is a great, it's very, very tough. And then that's when they also, you lost some of the height of the stones were burned or whatever. He did up.
You want to try this one, Bob?
Okay, now I don't know if you can get this, Calvin, from where you are.
He wanted this.
He did that one.
He did that one. Yep, he did that one. You got that one? Yep. And this one you can see just to the left or in front of the steeple here on the side is the steeple itself, where the point is right down into the roof of the church. And that's an amazing picture. And that's a once in a lifetime, and you got to get it then or you don't get it.
That's compliments of a man named Frederick Moores, who lives in Plattsburgh and grew up in Coopersville. He gave the let Phyllis Wells, the woman I mentioned earlier, take a picture of his copy. And that happened on February 28th, 1904.
1904.
And then just 2 years before, the rectory had burned. And it seems as if there was a time during that period when there was not a whole lot of activity here. There was a parish priest, but he lived in Chazy after the fire, and it was a Father Bergeron. And it wasn't until 1912 that a new rectory was built. And the new rectory was built by a Father Walter LaRocque, who was born in Coopersville, baptized, confirmed here, became a priest, and he came back to be parish priest here for 1 year in 1912, built the rectory, and revitalized the whole church community. And so he was a very important man to this parish.
LaRocque, spelled LaRocque, the real French.
That's right,
and
French.
Then some of his mentions were very French parish.
This was an extremely French parish.
Particularly with the Béchards, like the one over here on the right. You said it was very, very French, huh?
Oh, yes, the priest always spoke French in the church. He never spoke a word.
You didn't
of it.
translate it into English second time around, no?
Well, everybody spoke French in church. All my uncles and everybody, they spoke French. Nobody couldn't speak English.
Was there a lot of people at church back in those?
There was only one mass. It was at 10 o'clock, and the church was pretty near full. Then they started. The Father Garrett started. They used to call it a low mass at 8 o'clock in the morning. Then you could have your choice. Come the first in the morning, and that's how it went. And then now they had 3 masses, so there's not so many people. But you want to have one mass, probably the church would be pretty near full now.
That was Father. What priest would have been here? Father Guerin?
Father Guerin.
Father George Guerin,
Yeah.
who is uncle to Alphonse Béchard.
No,
to
Romeo Béchard.
Romeo.
Okay.
He's the uncle to Romeo.
To Romeo, and
now they have a son who's a priest.
who is Dean Béchard, and we're hoping to have a clip from the Mass. He said his very first Mass here at Coopersville, and we hope to include a clip from that Mass in your show.
Okay. Now, you mentioned, Ed, when you went to school, you didn't know any English.
No, I couldn't speak English. Just spoke French because at home my mother couldn't speak English, so I couldn't learn. And my mother didn't want me to learn English in the first place. She said, you're going to learn soon enough. So my 2 sisters, a lot older than I was, they used to speak English between themselves. And I said, what did you say? And they weren't allowed to tell me what they said because she didn't want me to learn.
Now, did your mother ever learn English?
No, she never did.
Never learned English.
She says, I'll not speak English and I never will. So she never did.
Yeah. Now, you learned Latin, I hear, Chudley.
No, I didn't.
Well, I thought you were an altar boy.
Well, I went to St. Mary's school, and they were part of the things that they would teach us because of being Cooperville. They had to have altar boys, and when it got into saying the Latin part of it, I was having little problems.
Well, what you do is you say, like, Dominus with like that,
Yeah.
and they don't know what you're saying. You did Dominus with this. I used to be an altar boy. Were you an altar? You never were an altar boy here?
Well, I started to be one, but I didn't continue with it.
You don't count one day, Charlie. It's got to be more than that.
2 days.
2 days.
Father held that comment against you, huh? From when you
Father
were a little
Broussard.
boy.
All right, where Father, you've been sitting here very quietly here, and what are you thinking while we're talking like this? When is it my turn?
Well, I'll tell you about the Latin, of course, was always very interesting, and I took it for 6 years, of course, and then we went into philosophy, which was Latin, and in my case, and in French, where I had to really perfect my French, although I always had spoken it. And then I went into theology, which was also in Latin and in French in Montreal. But when we came into the States, of course, I did learn English, and I did, especially in Plattsburgh, because in Champlain, I was still kind of young, and I still hadn't gone only to school 1 year there. But then I did learn English in Plattsburgh, and then I went on to Vermont to school, and then to Canada to finish up. But Latin, of course, was always the spoken language of the church, which I enjoyed very much in many ways, especially once I got to know it. And then in 1967, around that, with the new Vatican Council now being put into effect, then we went into the vernacular, and of course, Mass facing the people, and many other things like that.
Now, maybe you could tell us here, getting back to one of the reasons why we're here, what brought about this celebration, except for 150 years? That's what brought it about, but how did it start? Whose idea was this?
Who do we blame, Father?
Who do we blame?
Mine.
Yours? Well, you could say it loud. It's okay. Yours, huh?
Well, you know, in 1790, when the parish was supposedly begun, we'll put it that way, over in Tremblay Bay, and then they moved up here from what I gather. Now, Shan may be able to correct me on that, I'm not sure. But I thought of doing something in 1990. But then again, I said, well, it's not the time. However, seeing that I was left here until now, I said, well, I'm going to do something for the 150th anniversary, because last year, on account of my sickness that I had in 1991, they were deciding to move me, and they decided to leave me here. So that's why I'm still here in my second year since my supposedly moving.
You're going to get your name, your picture in this, one of the only ones here, going to get a picture in this book as the pastor, and it's going to last forever and ever. Father Cote.
Oh, I'll be thrilled.
Won't you be thrilled, huh? Hey, won't you be thrilled?
Wait till you read it, Father.
And so yeah, you decided. Then what happened from there, Shan? When did you get involved?
Well, there was a meeting I didn't go to, and then I found out that I was writing the book. My husband, Brian, is on the parish council, and he's a trustee, and they had a meeting to discuss what to do, and decided to have a history written, and I was volunteered, which I'm having a great time, because I'm getting to know people in the parish I never knew before, and learning so much about the history of this area that I'll be very happy to put in writing
I suppose one of the reasons you don't know a lot of people in the parish, you're running around with these 3 daughters of yours and all their activities. That takes time.
Well, just like any mother or father,
Yeah.
Bob, that's true.
But you're very active with them. I know we used to read your wanderings there and your trips with the car and the flat tires and the other things. Those are all part of growing up.
That's right. Maybe we had a few more adventures than some people.
All right. Now, if somebody wants, and you do want to get early purchases of this book, so you'll have an idea how many to print.
Right.
What would you tell those people out there? If you're interested in a book about the Cooperville area and church, how do they go about it, and what's it cost them?
Well, to the donation we're asking for $10, they can have a name mentioned or group of names on the memorial page and a copy of the book, and they need to send their check to Father Cody here at the rectory. And the address, Father?
74 Mason Road.
It's Champlain 12919. When the book is actually published, we will make it available then in local stores and through the parish. But it's you may get a cheaper price by buying it now. We haven't finalized all the details, but it'd be nice for us to know how many we
Yes,
we
you
are
sure don't want to be
looking at.
short.
Of course, I will add to that. Then, like you say, we don't want to be short because we did put a minimum price of $5 for the memorial and then $5 for the book. But I have received quite a few donations of more than that, of which, of course, I am very, very pleased. So if anybody can do that, it will help to defray the cost, which will be.
It's quite expensive to have a book.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And another, speaking of donations, one of the other ways that we're celebrating this year is we're going to have a state historical marker put up across from the church, probably somewhere near the site of the original log church. And I can't thank Eddie Bayshard enough for giving the donation to have this marker put in place, because I think this church deserves the recognition that it will get from that marker.
Do you realize that if this is in memory of his mother, it's going to have to be in French?
Well,
Do you?
well, whatever I'm going to give that the option to those that want to put it up. So
That's very nice, Edward. You're very thoughtful, and that's Paris and the people of Cooperville appreciate that very, very much.
Well,
Then
they were short on money, and then they were wanted to make like parties and stuff like that. Well, I said, well, $300 ain't too much. No.
You've been very successful. You had a business.
Yes, that's right. I was successful in life.
You had a relative.
I was born on a farm, and when I was to be 28 years old, that's when I left the farm, and I bought a little coal business from Sam Long in Rouse's Point. And from there, I went to the oil business. And when I got old enough, I just sold out to Agway and retired.
And you put in many long hours, you and your wife.
Oh, yeah. Well, people think that we put on long hours, but it's not that bad.
Well, don't say that. They're going to think it wasn't long hours. Not like farmers.
Not really.
Farmers put in long hours.
Compared to a farmer, I had short hours.
And you didn't get up at 5 o'clock.
No
either,
way.
did you?
Well, unless somebody's had some trouble the furnace, it didn't matter what time it was, 5 o'clock, 2 o'clock, I'd get up. But that didn't happen very often. Just once in a while.
I called him once in the middle of the night.
You
like
did?
that.
Yeah?
Yeah, but it didn't happen too often. Just once in a while. I was glad to do it.
Right. You know what the easiest job in the world is? I found out later, working for IBM. IBM was so easy to work for. Some of those people worked over 35 years and you never knew. They don't show their age even.
That's right.
Yeah, right?
That's right.
Chudley Folger. We'll be right back. You're watching Hometown Cable, and we're talking about Cooperville and St. Joseph's Church, sometimes referred to as the Mission Church of the North Country.
Oh, that's the other thing we didn't talk about.
You know, the backbone of any church, in addition to its parishioners, are the records it keeps. And the Roman Catholic Church has some of the best records there is for genealogy or anything else. If you're a Catholic, you can usually trace back your people very easily. When you're not Catholic, individual church looks for records. It's very, very difficult. And I see right on top of here, 1843, 1846. What are these, Father?
Well, these are the records of the baptisms, marriages, and burials that take place in a parish. Now, many times they are all grouped together year by year as we go on. Now, from what I understand, that when this church was built in 1843, 44, and then the cornerstone laid there in 1844, then they began the records again here. Now, the records before 1843, we know nothing about. Many times people will come here to get genealogy things for before 1843, and I cannot direct them. I have to tell you what I used to do when I heard that a priest from Chambly used to come down here and say Mass in the log churches and things like that. And then what happened is, when I heard that I used to send them to Chambly. So 3-4 years after I moved here, I happened to go through Chambly, and I stopped at the parish there. And the priest, of course, looked at me and he said, "Are you the one that's sending all these people over here?" He says, "We don't have them here." So I don't know whatever happened to the records since then, because now I do know they must have been destroyed or something happened. So I just wanted to say that The first records here are put in here, and of course they were all written in French.
That's the thing. Just because you find them don't mean much unless someone's there to decipher them, because they're in French and sometimes Latin.
Well,
In
this
Champlain.
is it. And then the writing sometimes is very poor. Now, we did have a Benoit Pontbriand who came and he took pictures on film of all our books up to 1880. And then he made a book and put it all together. And I do have that book in the house. I guess I didn't bring that one with me. And it has the baptisms and the deaths in there from 1843 until 1880. They were not allowed to go beyond 1880 because of contemporary people still living. So these are the books that we have. And like Bob was saying there, that we do go eventually into the Latin. Now, was it around 1860, in the 1860s, I guess, that we go into the Latin. Still English here.
Can't impress how important these books are to people out there. And of course, they are not kept here in the sacristy. They're kept in a fireproof safe or fire-resistant safe. Some of the most important things in any parish are these records.
All right. Now, this book here does bring out the Latin, which begins about in 1888 to 1907, which is volume 8, actually. And the Latin, and still written in longhand, just like the French used to be. Then what happened after a few years, and especially when Father Larocque came here and began, in fact, until 1907, we stopped the records, and then there's nothing until 1913, because I guess those records definitely stayed most likely in Chazy or wherever they happened to be. But in 1913, when they began here again, then they began a new format, which we are still carrying out. And you'll see it's all in what they call block form.
That's I haven't seen this. This is very nice this way.
Yeah.
You know what you're looking at. Very, very easy.
All in block form. Now, I could have brought one of my own records. What I have done, instead of writing, because sometimes the priest's writings are something like I don't know what, that people can't always read. So I print all mine, so they can always read them, and I just signed my name in longhand.
Very thoughtful. Believe me.
In fact, I have to say that once when Bishop Berzana came to investigate my books in Newcomb when I was there, and he happened to look at that, and he saw how it was printed. Not that I want to brag about it, but he says, beautiful job.
Absolutely, no question about it. If you've ever looked in records, you'll know what he's talking about. You've probably looked up there, and it's tough.
And then all printed.
They're not always as interesting, though,
No.
because one of the earlier books, a priest has his grocery list and what he paid for.
Is that right?
Paid for the food. Written, I think it's upside down on one of the pages.
Now, you got to remember also that this is not birth records. There are no birth records at the church. These are baptism records, which usually takes place the next day or the day after, particularly in the olden days, because they weren't expected to live very long. They were sick many times and died within 2 or 3 days, and they wanted them to be baptized.
That's right.
Correct?
I had 2 sisters that died. One was 7 years old, the other one was 2 years old, and they had diphtheria, and they died young, and the doctor couldn't do nothing about it. And they just...
Yep. There was some very sad time, in fact, before you and I were born.
Yeah. So they were my mother tells me this, they were quarantined, and they'd leave the food on the front porch, and when they were gone, my father or my mother used to go out and pick it up, bring it in the house. And when people looked through the windows at them, and they weren't allowed to go in the house.
Tell me, when's the last time you had a conversation in French?
When I go to Canada, or some Canadian comes over here.
Like your brother and yourself?
No, we don't.
You don't speak French, huh?
We don't. I used to think in French all the time, but I don't no more.
You think in English now?
No, it's English.
It's very difficult. I speak a little bit of French, but I have to think and convert it.
That's right. That's how I used to.
And when you see me going like this, I'm converting it in my head. See?
That's right.
And it's so slow.
Yeah. When I was a kid there, I used to think in French, and then I translate it in English. Yes. But now it's automatically in English. I don't think no more in French.
Will you dream in French or English?
Depends what kind of dream I'm dreaming about.
Oh, I'm not going to get into your dreams like that. Wow.
Some dreams, you never know what they're going to come turn out.
All right.
I want to mention, Bob, to add to the confusion with these records, I noticed reading the Hancock diary, I think there were 5 or 6 or 7 different places that people were buried back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. The Chute Cemetery, one entry said so-and-so was buried on the ridge next to so-and-so's house. You know, they had all these private little places, and so you don't always find the relative in the Catholic cemetery where you think you will.
I'm looking right now, I was looking yesterday for a death in 1841 for a lady in Ohio, looking for a David Southwick, a relative of the Southwicks, and there's no town records before 1881 or 91, and there are no church records whatsoever that I know of for the Methodist Church. If there were any, they burned in Perry's Mills back then. So now I've got to go look in Moores. I think he's buried in Moores, and I'll go check. When I leave here, I'm going to check for the lady in Ohio. People are very interested in knowing these things, and I don't know why sometimes, but I'm interested. Are you interested in genealogy at all?
Of course.
You are? And are you, Father?
Now, I will tell you on genealogy, I didn't go a lot in genealogy until my cousin that was beatified when the Pope came to Montreal in 1984. And she was beatified there on September 11th at the Gyrie Park. And of course, around that time, I learned that, well, before that time, I learned that she was related to me. So I did go to L'Acadie, where she was born and baptized, and then I made the comparisons as to her births and baptism and her relatives, along with those of my grandmother, to whom she was first cousin. So I did start looking into that at that time. Outside of that, I didn't go a lot into genealogy. I don't know why.
Well, I'll tell you, if you have a priest who's interested, it's much easier to get the church records, and you don't say, could you come back next week, or come back another time, I'm watching a ball game, or whatever. I'm serious, but because they know how important it is, and they can appreciate it, you know?
Well, I've always accommodated
Thank
the
you.
people.
That's great. So if you, no matter where you were born, if you're having troubles, come to Cooperville. Father will help you. He's very accommodating.
I try.
And buy a book while you're here about the Cooperville Church. Who is your cousin that was beatified?
Blessed Mother Mary Leone, Paradis.
Okay, we remember that happened.
And
back in
my grandmother was a Paradis.
Was she one of the first ones out of Canada, isn't she? Was there,
Possibly
I remember
not.
when that happened, yes?
Well, the Paradis actually, when I looked at that book, and I still got it in the house, and then the Gregoire side of the family, which was her mother's side of the family. But I didn't find out exactly where the Gregoire started, but the Paradis came to Ile Orleans, or Orleans Islands, off Quebec City in the St. Lawrence. So Joseph Paradis that moved there, and then they moved down towards this area eventually.
Mm-hmm. All right, you have something also that's old.
All I have.
Well, before you go
yes,
on,
go ahead.
Did you want to tell
This
me?
is
I
this.
mentioned the grocery
This
list.
is the grocery list.
It's a French grocery list. So, and I can't read French upside down. I know it says a pound of sugar here.
Uh-huh.
10
cents.
cents.
I just, in my head, I just converted that to sucre.
Sorry, un livre sucre. it says
Sucre,
here.
there you go, see?
A pound and a half of butter, does it say? Father,
Pound and a
30
half of
cents.
butter.
Yeah.
And so
And beef
we
there.
have to
maybe.
look this over a little
Yeah.
closer and see.
Oh, these are some of the things that we found in ours in Champlain, that they had a report of the cornerstone laying, and all the priests who came all signed the book. There's 2 or 3 pages of it. A nice remembrance, you know. In our we're not even we're 100 years old, I guess. Our present church.
No, it's more than that.
100,
Oh,
well,
the
1885,
present church.
87.
Oh, the
Yeah.
present
The
church.
original started 1960, I think it was. 1860, yes.
And it was originally a Methodist church
Across the
building.
yes,
That was purchased
Yes.
and turned into a Catholic
Right.
building. So thanks to Carl LaFountain, Perry's Mills.
Yes.
This is a copy of a spiritual and financial report, 1915 to 1916,
This
at St. Joseph's here in Coopersville.
for those people who were not around back in the 40s or whatever, they used to issue every year a parish report that listed everybody in the parish and how much money they gave. Now, you didn't get money during the year, but about a week before you made out your report, the money used to roll in. You remember that, Father? And they would all come in with their hundreds, and because they wanted to look good in the financial report. And it got to be a blackmail type thing, and they kind of cut it out. And I know my father-in-law was all in favor of it because he was very good to his church, and he'd say, put it in a bulletin. He said, we'll get it out there, and he figured he'd get more money that way. And it was true, it worked.
Eddie told me a story about how they used to have the families kind of pitted against one another to raise the most money for the church.
As a group?
As a group.
Yeah?
Yeah. Let's put it a card party, and they had to sell so many tickets. Well, they were against each other to see who's going to sell the most tickets. I remember one year there was Manny St. John and Roy Beaucaire. They were against each other. And Manny St. John was ahead of Roy Beaucaire. But at the last minute, Roy Beaucaire pulled out a bunch of tickets out of his pocket here, and he beat him.
Oh, yeah, it was a kind of pride.
Yeah,
pride
I tried. No,
thing.
it's just an honor.
Yeah.
An honor. He raised the most money.
Yeah,
And Manny St. John was Marion Bayshard's father, right?
Yeah.
Marion, who's married to Romeo. And he was the road commissioner for many years in Champlain.
Yes, very much so. Now, this type of thing is also very good for genealogy because you knew who was here in the parish in 1915
And Bob,
and how little you gave.
your fascination with the
The
Bayshards.
Bayshards,
Well,
yes.
I think I counted 28 Bayshards listed in this family in this list.
The only ones who can go against that are the Rabideaus in Moore's Forks. Now, I think there's 47 listings for the Rabideaus in the phone book for Moore's. 47 separate listings.
That's amazing.
Because I've counted those, but they gave you what you broke it down. For instance, in the
Here's
coal collection.
Right, here's for example, here's Prisk Aslan,
Okay.
which became Ashline.
Yeah.
And just a point of interest, it was Prisk Aslan who took the steeple out of the roof when it fell through in 1904. He donated 200 ears of corn for the fair ticket.
Yeah.
Now he looks like a good giver, so I don't think I'll be insulting any Ashlines by reading this aloud. The coal collection, he gave $1. His Christmas and Easter collection, each $1. $5.60 for pastoral support. He sold $10 in tickets for the fair. And then under donations, they break it down into singing and work. He didn't do either. He gave $1. And then his pew rent for his family of 5 was $15. So, but some other interesting things here were Charlie Aslan, who gave $2.50 in gold. Some of the donations were in gold. One lady, Mrs. Napoleon Bayshard, who would that be?
My uncle, my aunt.
She gave a bedspread for the fair, and let's see, Mrs. Oliva Bayshard.
Yeah, that's Johnny Bayshard's mother.
She gave a hem-stitched apron for the fair. So some sang, some worked, some gave money, and then they break down the expenditures for the year. The pastor in that year, can I say, Father, he made $700 salary. He was ministering to 64 families and a total of 258 communicants. That year there were 15 baptisms, we could probably count in the book,
Yes.
and 1 marriage, and there were 3 adult deaths. They don't mention children. I don't know if it was because children tended to...
What was the income, say, for the year?
The income for the year...
We just gave individual a little bit.
$2,355.99.
Okay, now you talk today. We're talking in Champlain. We've taken 40,000, and whatever you're giving at church, and you're talking $1, $5, $2,000, and that was 64 families, give or take. So you're talking there about 30 some odd dollars if they all gave equally. Now you talked about pew rent. What was pew rent, Father? Many people don't know about pew rent, probably.
Well, I don't know much either.
You don't know either about it?
Except I will say though there was pew rent, and I remember not here as such, but when I was in Plattsburgh growing up, and we had pew rent in my home parish, Our Lady of Victory, and of course they always rented the center aisle pews, and then The side aisle pews, of course, were not rented as such. That was for the people who didn't have pew rent. Then I remember Christmas midnight mass, that if you wanted a place to sit in church, you had to go in shortly after 11. Then the priest, of course, wouldn't open the church till 11:30, and then we'd all crowd there in the cold outdoors. And then the people who had the pews, they'd come in about 10 minutes or 5 minutes to 12, and if anybody was in their pew, they'd ask them out.
I was going to say, that's when I first learned about pew. When I was sitting in a pew, the man tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You're sitting in my pew."
That's right.
And I said, "What do you mean your pew?" And he said, "I rent that, and that is mine at this Mass every week."
Yeah. Well, the pews, there were different prices. It depends where you sat in the church, you know. And most they sat in the middle aisle, and you pay so much for your pew, and it was yours. There was a number on the side of the pew. There was a little tag when your name was written right on it, and that was you. Well, suppose you didn't come to church, or somebody thought you weren't going to come to church, and they sat in your pew because nobody was sitting in it. I remember one time I was sitting in church, and Mr. Poland's pew was right in front of us. And my uncle, Ernest, he was going to church in Champlain, but he just come to visit. So he sat in that pew because nobody was sitting there. First thing you know, Mr. Poland comes in, and he was a man that was deaf, you know, so he could talk very loud. So he said in French, "You're sitting in my pew." You know, everybody in church, my uncle just jumped right up and right across and sat in another pew. And he sat in Prince Asline's pew. My father said to himself, if Prince Asline comes to church, he's going to get out of there too. But he didn't come to church that day.
You know, Prince Asselin, this is the second or third generation. Prince Asselin was one of the first founders of the village of Champlain. He was not noted for the first founder because they've given Plenty More, because Plenty More was the first Englishman. But the first person who was French was Prince Asselin, and is noted for that. And I'm very proud that I have a grandson who is about the 12th generation of Prince Asselin, who's now Ashline.
Tell him to come to the picnic, Bob.
Come to the picnic.
Yeah, he's
Right.
related.
He's related.
Would you like to know?
As long as they don't sit in someone else's pew. And there's no Plenty More people.
Ephraim Fozier spent $12 in pew rent for his.
There you go, that year, $12. Your grandfather. Yeah. All right. Now, and you were talking about Prince Asselin and Plenty More. Sometime when you're in Champlain on a corner of Church and Main Street, right in front of the old village hall, you'll see a big stone or a rock about 2 feet in diameter. You look at the plaque that's dedicated right there, and that says Prince Asselin and Plenty More. They're both there, and 2 different people who were representing them, an Ashline and a relative of the Moors from New York City. And I have no relatives here in this place right now, but I do have a man over there who's running the camera who's probably saying, "Take a short break, but we'll be right back." Hometown Cable. First time I met Eddie Bayshard many years ago, I said, "Do you live here in Cooperville?" He said, "No, I live in where?"
Corbeau.
Corbeau. Tell me why you said that.
Because when I was a kid, my father and mother never mentioned Coopersville. They always said Corbeau, you know. So that's why I thought I lived in Corbeau.
Was it ever known as Corbeau?
Yeah, when the railroad D&H went through, that's when they changed the name, the station, they called it Coopersville. But before that, it was always called Corbeau.
All right.
That's why.
Anything else you want to mention about Corbeau?
Any of the references to the church at Coopersville, they would say the church at Corbeau, and any of on the first deed for the property, and in fact, we have an insurance policy from our house dated 1869, I think, and the address is Corbeau. It's not Coopersville. So, so that was the original name of the community.
And as Calvin mentioned it, which I remember now, there was the first or second Catholic school was at Corbeau, and that was just around this area before they had it in St. Mary's in Champlain. It was back in the 1800s, and you can check that out.
And that's why it's great to be doing this sort of thing with you and Calvin, because that's something we didn't have any information on until now.
You can follow through on that.
Follow through on that.
And again, we want to mention again that this book will be available late in the year, in time for Christmas, I think you
At
said.
least in time, yeah,
In
definitely.
time for Christmas. It'd be a great gift for anybody who's left the area. My sister, for instance, would be great. She had a lot of friends here. She grew up in this area on the Stetson Road, and she was 3 years younger than me, so it made a bigger impression on her than it did on me. I got here was 16, but I liked Cooperville very much. I was an altar boy here. And the other thing, again, is pictures you want. Tell us again what they can give you for your book.
We are especially looking for pictures of the original log church or the second log church that replaced the first one when it burned, and we would really like to have a good picture of the first rectory, which burned in 1902. And anybody who has a little story to tell about the fire, about anything that's happened in Coopersville that they remember particularly, give me a call, because I'll come by and we'll do an interview and we'll include it in the book.
Even if you only heard it and you're not sure, tell Shan about it and she'll follow it through and see if you can check out something, correct?
That's
all right? And will you give them credit with a picture, say picture from or anything? Is that going to happen?
Definitely,
And your name will be in the book. So if you've got some pictures you'd like in there, talk with Shan and you'll get your name on this memorial page too.
Right. We plan to have a lot of pictures. We plan to use as many pictures as we can possibly put in, because people really love to see old pictures.
If you're sure you want one of these books, and I don't know why you wouldn't if you're anywhere from this area, tell her right now, get your it's $5 for the book at this point.
You ordered 25 books.
Well,
right,
I know, but I'm going to give you at least 3. I know I'm going to order at least 3 before I leave. And the 25, I think you were thinking of the money you owed me. I think it's what that's why you're thinking of. That's what you're thinking about, the 25.
Speaking of pictures.
Thinking of pictures. Yes. Speaking of pictures.
This is a picture of Ephraim and Artemis Efosier that paid $12 for pew rental.
Oh yes, that they had their own. And remember, these were the people that owned the brick house, the former hotel. There, and that's where Shan and Brian Moore and family now live. And great old picture. And you've inherited this?
Yeah, it's when it's left in the house, and it's put away for the family to use in years to come.
Okay, great things to have. And when you got things like this, please don't let them go at auctions. If you got any relatives, they shouldn't go at auction. I don't care how much someone wants to give you for the frame. If you need the money, sell the frame, but take the picture out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And where were they from originally? Where were the Fosiers from?
My grandfather was originally, from my understanding, was from around Pawtucket, Rhode Island, or Manchester, New Hampshire.
One of the few non-Frenchmen.
No, they were French. They were
but
French.
they just didn't come from Canada.
They spoke French.
Yeah?
They spoke
Oh
French
yeah, Mr.
very well.
Fosier spoke
Yes.
French.
So when you were young, you could speak to them because you couldn't speak to the English.
I spoke in French to them all the time.
Is that right?
That was their main language.
Yeah. Eddie, did you say that Mrs. Fosier was your teacher?
Yeah, that was
okay.
Mrs. Forge's son married a school teacher, and she used to teach school around this area. She used to teach school in that little school right here.
Yeah, I think she taught at
Her name was
St.
Lillian Matat before she married
Yeah,
Ian Fosier.
she was a Matat.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you that I have some connections there. And I lived on the Stetson Road. I belonged to the Shazy School District. And because they didn't have sports team, I wanted to play sports like I had at Moore's. So I made an arrangement with Leon Fosier to ride with him every morning and come back at night. When they lived right across from Alphonse's store.
No, they lived with them.
Okay, they lived with them. And this was in 1943, 44, I beg your pardon, 44, 45, and 46. And she taught school, so he had to go in every day with her. And I never missed a day of school. In the 2 years I went to school, if I couldn't get down to the corner on my bicycle, I went with the milk truck. Right? And he had 2 cars. He had a 1930.
One was my grandmother's, and the other one is his car.
He had an old car that he only would use, or his new one of
29 Ford.
He only used that one, I think, when it didn't rain. When it rained, he used the 37.
The 29.
29?
Yeah.
He had a 29 and a 37?
29 Ford was my grandmother's.
And a 37?
Was his.
Okay. And they, depending on the weather, when they used those. And so I knew the Fosiers very well. And the Bayshars came from Canada originally?
Yes, my father and mother came from Canada. And they moved to Coopersville there. And when they got married, and they run that little farm where Hancock had on halves, about for 4 years. Then they sold the farm. It was a private auction. Anybody was interested, they went in the house, and Mrs. Hancock said, "How much you give me?" And my father was the last bidder. He said, "I'm going to give you 10,000," and nobody else bid on it. And when they walked out the door, one guy said, "You're going to have some gray hairs when that farm is paid for." Within 6 years, it was all paid for. Because my father was a hay dealer, and he made his money a lot of. He told me once. I said, "Where'd you make your money?" He said, "On the hay dealer." He said, "You don't make no money on the farm."
Now, do you remember? You don't remember when the boats went up and down the river here?
Yes, I remember.
You remember those?
I used to watch the school right here, that little schoolhouse. And Bill Earl coming up the river was a boat. It's not a boat, it's a barge like, and with a motor on it, with sand for the Sharon Iron Works. And
The molding sand.
yes, and they would open the bridge, both bridges, a railroad bridge and a Route 9 bridge, and they'd go by, then they close them back up again. Then, of course, you had to toot his horn, and they'd open the bridge for him. It was a hand crank. And the kids used to go jump on the bridge with him to help the guy crank, and the bridge would turn it right around. Let them go by, and they'd turn it the other
The
way.
bridge right here in the community.
Yeah, right, both bridges, the road bridge and the railroad bridge.
Now, you know, one more thing. I don't know what you've researched this, but at one time, the main road from Canada to Plattsburgh was down through Lacole, down Mason Road, and then it turned right, and it went over to Honeymore Corners. That was the main road.
That was Route 9 then.
That was Route 9 itself.
Route 9. There was, then they made it go through Champlain, then it was 9B now.
All right. Now, that we got to remember, that was years ago, before your time even.
Yeah, well, when I was a kid, there was no electric going through here. At home, there was no electric poles along the road.
You're a lot older than I thought.
And we had a kerosene lamp, no running water, no bathroom, no sink. No, your father get to go to the river, fill up the milk cans with water with a horse, bring him in the house, put him in the tub. Then we take a dipper, put it in the sink. You had to save that water because my father didn't care about running after water all the time.
Well, let me ask you, when you took bath, 2-3 people used the same bath
That's
water.
right, that's right.
And
my sister took his bath first. There was me, there was my brother.
So you didn't get clean, you just rearranged the dirt.
That's right, that's how it happened.
See, he had it tough, and he also walked to school. And where was your school that you talked about?
Just about 1,000 feet down the road there from the church.
Going north. On the west side, the left side.
And on the left side of the road, there's a tree there right in the middle of the field where Mr. Vinacker owns the land. That was right in the schoolyard, right in the school was. When they sold the school, Mr. Bill Paulcat, the old man, bought it, and he moved it down to the lake. And this Dr. Star has it today as a camp.
Okay. Now you see that while we're working in here, they're working outside. They're cutting the grass to the valleys, keeping the yard very well out there. And this is what happened years ago. The centralized school system, Champlain centralized about 1941, 40, 41, 42. Before that, they had the 15 individual schools.
That's right.
This was number 9 right up the road.
Yeah. I still got that little book when they centralized the school.
You do have.
It's in the house somewhere. They tell you how they're going to do it, save money, so vote for it.
Yeah. Well, you know, I was thinking, if your father didn't have an inside bathroom, he had to go get water, and didn't have all these things, he paid too much at $10,000.
He did, but he was used to living there. He'd been there for 4 years. He said, "I'm not about ready to move out."
Cheaper than moving.
The next guy that's bidding against him, he said his worth just as much as him.
And then he said, besides my pew rent is paid at church. Right, Father? Well, Father, how has the churches changed since you've been in? You've been a priest for how many years?
36 years.
36 years. Do you notice a big change now from 36 years ago?
Definitely.
Definitely. With the people or the church itself? Or both?
I would say pretty much all around. Every facet. And I think what I'm thinking of a lot is that religious, political, the way people live and all that, it's all changed completely. because of the electronics, I think, and everything else that really came through. Because like we told you before, just the fact that the church are going from the Latin to the vernacular, and then the priest facing the people, and then even the approach on religion, because with the Vatican Council, what they did there is that they re-emphasized faith and morals as much as they needed to for our times.
And they need it.
And
we sure need it.
they need it.
Yeah.
But like I tell you, who knows what can happen in the near future. However, I will say that there is a definite nonchalant and maybe somewhat of a complacency in our church and even in the whole community. Because even people, if you recall what they did to the American flag, and even now I wonder how much respect they really want to show it.
I know. Yes.
So, and it's the same way with religion and all that. People are just getting complacent and things like that.
Which is why, Bob, it's so important to celebrate 150 years of Catholic faith in this community. And we won't be around, but I'm sure in 100 years they'll still be able to celebrate.
Or 50 years to celebrate the 200th. But there are people who were born here. Both these people to my right were born here. Father was sent here. He liked it so much. He's been here now for 13, 14 years. But there's a lady here who picked this place to come and find a home, and that is Shan, and that means a lot to Cooperville, and you must have liked this area.
That's
Much,
very
huh?
true,
You like
and
the
the
house?
longer we're here, the more we like it.
Well, I'm sure the people are glad you're here, and you're a well-known person in the area. You do a lot for writing. You've written. You still do some writing. You're North Country Catholic, and you don't write for the paper, the magazine. And
Yes,
you still
Strictly Business
you're
Magazine.
still in the Strictly Business, all right?
And the North Countryman off and on.
Okay. And of course, there are those that were born here, or that just came here, or were sent here. Some have left and came back, or are coming back, and that's the man on the right here. You've come back home.
Yeah.
You've been living in Vermont, and you're going to make your home back here now?
That's what we plan on doing, yes.
And just take it easy?
And take it easy and retire.
You're going to fish?
And do a little fishing and haunt Father.
You're going to hunt Father? Are you going to pay your pew rent?
Well, if he comes up with a pew rent, we'll pay it.
I don't know if I should ask you on camera, but you've always been pretty close to your church?
Yes,
over
I
the
have.
years, huh?
Yes.
It's a family trait. It's pretty hard.
It has been, yes. As Father knows in his records and everything else, I think the Fosiers have held their own with the church.
It's hard to realize today how people have fallen away from the church.
Yes,
a lot have fallen away from the church. Just don't take the time to get up and go to church.
Well, see, it's like anything else. You miss one time, miss the second time, first thing now you stay home.
I think you got it, Ed, right there. You got it. Exactly. It's so easy. It's like a diet.
That's right.
If you don't break it, you're all right. As soon as you break it, it's easier the second time to break it. Well, welcome back into the area, Charlie. Nice seeing you again, too.
We'll enjoy it.
Okay. Anything else you want to cover while we're here today? We're going to be back, I understand.
I think that about covers it for now.
Okay. And anything else that you can think of, Father?
Not immediately.
Okay. And if we don't see you here, we'll be seeing you in our church. We will have seen him in church by the time you see this, because he's going to be substituting for Father Joseph Margaret, who's gone on his well-deserved family vacation.
That's right.
Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in to Hometown Cable. We've been at the Cooperville Church at Corbeau. That's right? No, that's for you, Ed. That's for you. Corbeau.
You should probably mention about the Corbeau Creek that still exists.
Corbeau Creek Critters, right?
Yeah.
What's the Corbeau Creek Critters? Can you tell me that, Shan?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Donna Frenier, just up the road up here, the Critters, right?
I've fed her critters. We fed her recent nest of bluebirds.
Yes? And of course, we thank her for the show you saw. Which today we're talking here on the 18th, 17th. The show you saw this past Sunday when we were up at the Six Nation Museum, Indian Museum. It was Donna who took us up there. Mrs. Larry Frenier took us up there and introduced us to the Faddens, I think their name was, Faden or Faddens, and I've heard a lot of comments about that already, as a matter of fact. Good and questionable, but it was a good show, and thank you for tuning into Hometown Cable.
I have to say, I don't want to say too much on this, but I'll be on Route 66 tomorrow.
Well, we better find. What do you mean by Route 66?
Oh, you know that road that goes from east to west,
Yes.
along with Interstate 40?
Yes.
I'll be traveling that route. Although, no, I have to tell you, when I remember about 2 months ago when somebody always asking, well, Father, how old are you? I said, I'll be on.
Oh, that route.
I'll be on Route 66. I said, it's pretty soon, and it'll be tomorrow if you like.
Happy birthday then, huh? Happy birthday to Father Cote, Father Norman Cote. 66, huh? We could have went to school together back then, you and I.
Definitely.
I remember your brothers, we went to school. And thank you for tuning into Hometown Cable. And remember, there's one thing that you should never forget. This is brought to you exclusively by the Castines. Sam and Calvin, there's only two sources of income. They got their advertisers out there, and they've got their patrons. If you don't have a business, you can't advertise, but you can advertise by becoming a patron. Send $12 or more to Calvin and get that figure up so that he can do bigger and better things for you, covering all the things that he can possibly cover in the North Country. I had a call this morning. Someone wanted me to go do something. I said, you better call Calvin directly because he has a schedule and I don't know his schedule. But if you had something you want covered, call Calvin and ask him. He can't cover everything, but he tries. And don't be bashful when it comes time for becoming a patron. $12 or more.
When you order your book and send your $10 or larger donation, the checkbook's out. Write a check to Calvin too. This is history that you will want to see somewhere down the line.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's an unsolicited from the Moores, whose daughters are covered quite often on Hometown Cable, and they appreciate it. And if you appreciate it, show it. That's enough for that. And thank you very much, Chudley. Thank you, Ed. Nice seeing you again. You're also retired, no?
Oh, yes, I'm retired. Yeah.
You do a lot of square dancing, I see out there too.
That's something I will never give up because good exercise.
Okay. Thank you, Father. And thank you, Shan. Calvin, Castine on the camera. I'm Bob Venn, and you've been at Cooperville Church. We're coming right back. So, but that's right. I'm not closing out. I'm just saying goodbye for today. Well, we're back again, and where is there a better place to be seated if you've got any sins than between two people in black with white collars? Right here. See, I got my two fathers on one father on either side of me. First, Father Cody, you saw earlier in this tape, and on our right is Father Repet, who was a pastor here for. We'll talk about that, and of course, Shan. I was going to say Brown. Shan Brown Moore on the right. Father Cody, what has happened since we were last here? I don't know when that, a month ago or more.
Well, first of all, we will say that today is September the 23rd, in case somebody wants to know the real date.
It's right on the screen there, too. He put it.
Oh, he put it in?
He's very...
Well, he's efficient, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
All right. We did finish the painting in the church. We had the Stations of the Cross all painted there this week, and we put up the last ones this morning. And then we had the windows done on the porch and painted, frames and everything else. And then we have, this morning they were here to repair the doors, the front doors of the church, so there would be not so much air coming in. And they still have a little bit of more painting to do on the doors.
Right. I think I mentioned to you before, I asked you, except for the putting up of the plaque near the road from the base yard, there's no other celebration formal for your anniversary.
Not right now, unless there is something that somebody wants, then we will look into it.
Of course, there's a big thing coming up when the book is published and ready for sale, which I understand will be before Christmas. And
you want to know which Christmas?
Yeah, which Christmas is that?
Well, we're hoping for the year 2000.
You're working on it,
but we actually plan to have it ready in November.
Well, you know, I was telling that this morning to somebody. They asked me when the book was going to be ready. I said 1999.
Well, that's before 2000. That's for sure. Before Father Cote came here, maybe even before he ever thought of coming here as a pastor, there was a pastor here by the name of Father Repin. And Father Repin, you were here in what years?
I came in February 11th, 1961. And I left in June 1968.
So you were here 7 years.
7 years.
All right. Now, before we get into your time here, tell us where you were born, raised, and how you became a priest.
Well, I was born in Ogdensburg, New York. the Episcopal See of the diocese. And I was born in 1917, January 22nd. And I made my schooling at the local Catholic school there, Notre Dame. And my high school was at St. Mary's in Ogdensburg. And then after that I went to college for a year or so. And the thought of going to the priesthood came into my head. So I prayed to the Blessed Virgin, asked her, told her, well, I said, if you want me to be a priest, get me out of here. So I was out of the college in 6 weeks. And I was sick, and so I had to come home. And then when I went to go back in January, they wouldn't, my mother died, so I didn't go back. So then I thought of going to the seminary and becoming a priest. And I entered Wadham's Hall in 1940-41. And I studied there at Wadham's Hall. I went to St. Bernard's Seminary in Rochester, was ordained on October 19th, 1946, in Ogdensburg by Bishop Brian J. McIntyre, who had become bishop and was there from 1943 on in Ogdensburg. Now my first assignment was at St. John Bosco in Malone as an assistant with Father Arthur DeRoche.
Oh, yeah?
And then he left there. Father Rivette came, Father Edward Rivette became pastor in 1948 and the end of 47, 48, and then I left there in 1949. So that I was there only a little over a year when Father White succeeded me as assistant.
Which White is that?
Father Francis White.
Oh, okay, another Champlain name.
And then I went to, from St. John Bosco, I went to Long Lake, and I was there at St. Henry's Church there in Long Lake for 51 weeks. I was went there to study or to get myself ready, maybe to go and teach at Wadham's Hall. But then we had 9 priests die that year, in 1949, and so I was not sent to Wadham's Hall, but instead I went to Clayton as an assistant in 1951 until 1953. Rather 1949 and 50, I went in 1950, and then I came out of there in 1953. I went to Malone as an assistant at Notre Dame. And from there at 53 to 55, then I went to Edwards, New York, to be pastor there, along with the mission churches of Fine and Townville. And I was there until 61, and I came to this parish here in Coopersville, St. Joseph's. Before that, though, I was administrator in Amsteadville for a little over 2 months because I had been sick and had ulcers and had surgery, and so the bishop sent me to Amsteadville because Father Hatch had cancer and died in January 1961.
Is it the parishioners that give you those ulcers?
Sometimes.
Sometimes they do.
But I had them anyway. The doctor said, well, it's not what you eat that gives you the ulcers, it's what eating you.
Yeah, all right, I've heard that.
So I got the surgery for the ulcers and recovered, and then from there I was sent up here.
Okay, now while you were here, what are some of the things that happened at the parish that you remember? I know you said you refinished the sacristy here?
Yes, I mean the sacristy was a drill shed, it was a mess.
Uh-huh.
And so I forget just what year we started it, but it would have to be 2 or 3 years after I got here, and pretty sure a couple of years anyway. And if he looks at the books, he can see about the time that Mrs. Fozier died, Ephraim Fozier.
Uh-huh.
Because it was right after that I was looking to put in these chimes.
Right.
In the arm of coil.
61.
61, okay.
Does that make sense, Father?
It could be.
Yeah.
I came in February 61, so it seems though I don't know if I went that fast in doing this, but people responded very well.
And you also, you said you did something out of the vestibule here?
Yes, the vestibule, the doors were opening in, the outside doors opened in, and I figured they should open out because I was very much afraid of anything happened if
Another
furnace
lightning
exploded,
strike?
then
Yeah.
panic and people
Yeah.
going against the
Yeah.
doors, and maybe
Yeah.
some people getting crushed. the only door usually that they came in was over on the side near the rectory.
Yeah.
And then they would come in there, then they would usually go out that way too, but then I had Jules Trahan open the doors outside, and so that we could, with the crash bars, we could empty the church in 5 minutes, which I thought was good. And then I put in those swinging doors on the inside, and then we fixed up the confessionals there, but there was the new confessional there is in a more recent vintage. I didn't do that one. But the stairway was a mess going up to the attic. Willard Ducharme, remember Willard? Willard lived over here on the road at 9B.
I think so, but I'm not sure. I think that his son lives there now.
Yes.
Yes.
Willard came and helped me out in the parish here.
Right. And you said siding too on the house? You did?
Yes. Well, we put on aluminum siding on the house because it was quite bad shape.
Right. Any of these local parishioners say, "Here's the big spender"?
No.
When you got here doing all these things, right, Father? Do they ever say that?
They responded very well.
They did. Good. Well,
some of them, Romeo Bayshire, for instance, said to me, "Godfather, we didn't realize it looked so bad."
Well, I'm sure you get used to something and you don't realize that is true.
And, so when we got it nice, we were so pleased with the church.
Yes, and you can also hold meetings. You said you also hold mass here. Father holds mass right back here, because they don't fill the church on daily mass.
No.
So this is they got your heaters here, and you can this propane, so you can use that just at a given time and just keep enough heat. All right, we mentioned before when I was hearing myself echo. This is a tough church to talk in because of the echo. A reverberation here very much. You enjoy your time in Coopersville?
Oh, very much. Oh, yeah, because I got Bishop, who was the one we had in 1967?
1967, that would have been Bishop
Donnellan.
Yeah.
Well, I went on retreat down to Orisville, and he was getting ready to go to Atlanta. So I was at Orisville on retreat, and of course he had to have the change on Tuesday because we'd come out on Wednesday that he was going to be transferred and made Archbishop of Atlanta. And so he caught me in Orisville and told me that I was going to be moved. So I said, "Well, Bishop, I have some bills to pay there, the sacristy bills to pay." And I figured it was about $9,000 I had to pay. He said, "Well, somebody else has got to take the responsibility." And so I couldn't get out of it. So I was sent from here over to Constable, where I stayed for 2 years. But in the meantime here also too, we put in a new pipeline coming over from the rectory to the church, because every winter the pipeline would freeze. Water would freeze and you couldn't get water. So we fixed a new pipeline. We had, his name is one of the boys over in Champlain that had a backhoe. He dug the trench and we put in a sleeve for the water line to come through. And then I put in electric wires over here to have 2 thermostats so I could turn it on from the rectory and get the furnace going before I had to come over and do it.
So you, as we often mention here, you were right behind the legend, Father McCaslin, in being ordained, weren't you? He's just celebrating his 50th. Were you at the seminary when he was there? Do you remember? Because he's in his 50th and you've got 48 years.
I'm 48 years this year, yes.
Yeah. And then you also, of course, had 2 of our later pastors, Father Rivette and Father DeRosie, both were in Champlain.
I was Father Rivette's first assistant.
Is that right? And then, of course, Father White, now in Elizabethtown, was a graduate of St. Mary's Academy, from Mowers Forks, or just in that area, wasn't it? And all these names that are so familiar to us.
Oh yes, well Father White succeeded me and Malone at John Bosco.
So did you both, I know you would, but did you ever say Mass facing the altar rather than the people?
Oh, we
did for about 4 or 5 years.
Did you find that? Did you find that tough to change?
Well, no, I was a young man then.
It's easy to change when you're young. Well, I for some reason I used to hold Mass in that way in awe. I miss that Mass. I really do. I'm not out to crusade or anything like that, but I miss that. I miss the Latin in the Mass. It just, I didn't know what they were saying, maybe that was good, but it impressed me.
Well, it changed when I was in Watertown with Monsignor Farrell, and of course Monsignor Farrell was aging quite a bit, and he was finding it very, very difficult to adapt, and he would have us be on his side to learn the new mass and all that. And I recall that with the other assistants or so, but especially too with me. And I was so glad to be able to help him.
Good. Now, when you were here in the 60s, was it still a mission church very much? Were you still getting a lot of people?
Well, no, it wasn't a mission church at all.
Well, when I say that, of course, they used to send out their...
Well, Father Hermetisha
Yes.
Priso used to send out and play up as a mission church
Yes,
to get people
yes.
to give.
Well, of course.
They sent out thousands of
Isn't that a good idea? I mean, to get the money part of it.
Well, I know, but if you really don't need it, the person should be
All right.
supporting the
Okay, now tell me, what's a mission church and not a mission church? When you say it's
Well,
not
a mission
church.
church is usually where you have, like Champlain being a parish and having this as the mission church.
Oh, I see what you're
Yeah,
saying.
they would-
All right.
This would be like a secondary thing.
Okay.
Nowadays, what they are doing, instead of calling it a mission church, which they don't want to do, if a parish closes for us, I mean, if the resident pastor leaves, what they do then, they have one pastor for two parishes, but they have them as equal parishes, not as a mission parish.
Okay. We'll take a short break. You're at St. Joseph Church in Coopersville with us on their anniversary here in which is 150?
The church is 150
years old. The church itself, the parish is older than that, but the church itself 150 years old, and we'll be right back. Thanks for watching Hometown Cable. We've come out into the church proper, where we're going to see the various changes and the lightening up and the painting and so forth. When you do a big project like this, do you have to get permission from the bishop?
We sure do.
You sure do. At what money range do you have to get permission from the bishop when you want to spend money?
Well, now, with the new rule this year with our new bishop, we have to get permission for any kind of renovation inside the church, and there is no range from what I understand.
Yeah. Not only money, but they don't want you to physically change the church without some kind of permission.
Yes.
Well, isn't it as important to get the permission of the parishioners as well as the bishop to change, if you pardon the expression, my church while you are here as my shepherd? But it's my church. It's not, if you pardon it again, it's not your church except while you're here. But when you leave, I got to live with what you do. So do you ever ask the parish council, do they agree to what you want to do?
That's right.
All right.
I always bring it up to the parish council for any major change or any, even slightly or over minor change, if you want to call it that. Yes, I always contact the council. We have a meeting, and then I propose it, and then we talk it over, and that's it. Yes.
You know you've got such a great deal here. You don't want to take any chances at all of having to leave this nice parish, right?
You're right.
All right. Tell us what you've done. This on the top, I can remember sitting here when I was a junior in high school with Allez à Joseph, Été à Joseph, Go to Joseph. I can remember that. Well, I guess we talked about it when we were in the church once before. What did you do inside?
Well, we had it all repainted, the whole thing, walls, ceiling, and balcony. Even the Stations of the Cross, like I said, they're Stations of the Cross. We were done this Monday and Wednesday, and then today we finished putting them up. And it was Peg Barkham that graciously did that and furnished everything for them, so that was a great gift from her.
You mean she didn't paint them?
She painted them and everything.
She's the one that painted them?
She painted them on Monday and Wednesday mornings there this week, and then we put some up on Wednesday, and then we put the rest up this morning.
Well, we certainly know at Hometown Cable, we know all about Peg Barkham. She's been on several times with us, and we know the kind of work that she does and how she's very meticulous in anything that she does. And I guess all the parishioners thank you, Peg, and I thank you, and a great job, great job. The back altar, now when did you last have your back altar? When they started to face the people was when? In the 60s, 70s?
Early 60s.
Early 60s?
Well, when Father Leduc was here, he was here after Father Rapin left, and that was about 1968 until 1971 possibly. And he is the one that made all the renovations of the back altar and the new altar,
all right.
and then the renovations here in the sanctuary, yes.
So obviously there's no rule in the diocese that you do or do not have a back altar?
That's right.
You know, it's whatever the church wants, more or less, is okay?
Well, it has to be approved. In those days, I don't know exactly how it went, really.
All right.
But they did make the change, and that's all I can tell you.
Okay, that took place. And the rest of it, though, these new rugs?
No, they've been here. They must have been done maybe around Father Leduc's time, or maybe even early in Father Tremblay's time. I am not sure on that.
Do you still have a choir?
No.
You don't have a choir anymore?
No.
Do you have music during church at all? Much music?
Well, there's nobody to play the organ, but we do have some singing at the 10 o'clock Mass on Sunday.
And how many families do you have in the parish now? Do you remember?
About 160.
160 families?
Yeah,
Okay.
households or
Households,
families.
all right. And what else is about? Now, he's getting the statuettes in the back. Those were part of the decor before.
Well,
Confessions were there.
They were there.
Confessions were where those statues are.
The previous statues that you had before. All right. These are the same benches, been here for
The
years.
confessionals used to be where those statues are.
What did the confessionals?
The confessionals.
Okay.
the former confession.
Where are the confessionals now?
They're gone. That we use a reconciliation room there to our
Which is
left
off
over
to your
there.
left. All
See,
right.
we use a reconciliation room. Now, Father Tremblay is the one that changed and got rid of this confessional on our left here, and where the statue of the Blessed Mother is. And that was dedicated, of course, to the ash lines. And then on the right side, when Nevada and Louise, Nancy Nevada
Yes.
and Louise Deal died,
Yes.
and then we had that done in their memory over on the right side. And there, of course, we have St. Joseph. But I have to admit something, and I don't know if I should, but you see the two statues that are up there,
Yes.
they were in reverse. And what I didn't like, I'll tell you the truth, is that they were looking towards the wall rather than looking towards the middle aisle. So I made the change of the two statues, actually. And I said I might be crowned for it, but
But the plaques are still
the
on
plaques,
the other side.
but the plaques are still in their proper.
Where they had them.
All right.
No, I did change the plaques. I put them where the statue's
I
supposed to
thought the
be.
Nevada.
Yeah, that's why I said Nevada's on this side, along with the statue that I put with it.
Okay. They should be looking toward the middle rather than toward the wall.
I think
you
so too. I think so too.
Okay. Now you've installed the.
And then you see we got this Sacred Heart statue here to your right,
Yes, in the
Calvin.
right. Yep. Up
So
there in the corner.
we
yeah.
got that at that time.
Uh-huh. Now, do you use a wireless mic here
No,
at church? No.
no, not right now.
All right. Your stained glass windows are beautiful.
They are.
They've been here for years and years.
Well, I would say since the since
After the fire?
Since
They are
after the
beautiful.
fire.
Father Guerin evidently went around and solicited
Uh-huh.
funds for them. You notice it's one family.
Yes, I
or
see that,
It's
yes.
generally a family. It's the Saint Jean Baptiste Society
Yep.
for this window over here.
Yep. Are you big on banners in church like that?
I'm
what do we
not
call-
big. I'm not big on it, but I do like them.
You do. They've never turned me on very much. I've never needed those. Not that anybody cares whether I do or not, but
I'm not big on
we,
it.
We see them in church more and more now. You know, and I've never.
I think maybe the children. They're
Children,
nice for
yes.
children to
Okay,
give them,
I agree with that. They have them when there's masses later on, I guess. But all right. Anything else? The fans. When did you put the fans in? Who did that?
I put the fans in some 5-6 years ago, I would say now. And then the crucifix that's up in the choir loft, that used to be in the reconciliation room, and I always found that it was a little bit out of sight, and I always like to have the crucifix in front of me when I say the Mass, so I moved it up there myself with some help, of course, and which I like very much.
Yeah. Is that opening up there someplace that you go up that rope and you go up there and do things? Did you do that?
No, the rope actually was all hid up there just a very few months ago, and then Bruce West brought it back down to hang to ring the bell. In fact, if you ever want to hear the old bell, we pull on that rope. But that trap door, of course, does lead into the tower.
Okay.
And where the electronic speakers are.
You have hot water heat?
No, steam.
Steam, all right.
Steam heat.
Anything else you want to tell us while we're out here, Father?
Yes, last year, or was it last fall, or was it the fall before, that I did add a new boiler down here, which is now very efficient and working very beautifully in comparison to what we had before.
Good. Who did the painting inside? Who did your decorating?
Well, it's the Edwin out of Plattsburgh
From
concern.
Plattsburgh? Yeah. Did a good job. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
We saw that we were here before. We saw the scaffolding inside. And everything's all done. Is there anything else to do in your church outside? You're all pointed well. Everything is. The roof is good.
Well, I had the church pointed some 7-8 years ago. I had all the church pointed out there, because all the cement between the stones were just crumbling and falling to the ground.
Okay. Shan, what have you got to say about any of it? Is this going to be in the book, too, about the redecoration in 1994?
Oh, it sure is.
Okay. Do you know that yet, or are you thinking of putting it? I mean, how far along are we on this book? Year 2000.
You're getting pushy, Bob.
I just want to get a commitment.
we by the end of next week, most of the book will be
Is that right?
completely written and then turned over to the
Printer.
Tim Gagno,
Okay.
who is going to. He has a desktop publishing company with Brad Menard, who lives in Coopersville here. Tim lives in Moores, and they are going to format the entire book for us so that it is camera ready when it goes to the printer.
Okay. Who does the proofreading?
Well, I'm.
You're doing that too?
No, I've got a couple people who.
I was going to say, it's hard to do it and proofread it both because you
yes.
don't pick up your own mistakes.
That's right. Well, Tim, luckily there's a spell check on the computer program, so that'll take care of some of the problems. But we've got a couple people who will do that.
All right. But if you've got a spell check, and you use the word S-T-E-E-L instead of S-T-E-A-L, it won't pick it up.
No.
Because both words are legitimate words.
That's right. So
Okay.
hopefully I know the difference.
You know the difference on that. All right.
Hopefully.
Can I go out? You're supposed to say, may I go out? Is that
That's
correct?
right.
All right. We cannot. We'll take a short break. We're at St. Joseph's Church, the 200-year plus here in the North Country. 150-year celebration, this church itself. And we'll be right back. Please stay with us.
Yeah.
We've got about 5 minutes to close out here in Synopsize, and we want to talk a little bit to Father Repe again. You were talking off camera about the front steps that you had fixed back when you were here.
Yes. All right, the front steps were in very bad shape. They had steps going all the way around the building, and they were crumbling, and so the insurance wanted us to cut off part of it. So we decided we'd better get them fixed. So we had Joe's Trahan, he put in new steps and put that iron railing around, and we built a new walk going out to the road. So that made a big improvement there too. Although I understand, of course, after 30 years, they're going to fall apart. But I'd also like to mention too that while I was here, the people responded very, very well in giving to the church. They were very responsive in doing it and very supportive, and we hope that they would continue to do so even today.
That makes the priest feel good when he knows the people are happy with him.
right.
Don't be afraid to tell your pastor that you're happy with what he's doing, and if you don't like what he's doing, maybe you could tell him instead of telling the neighbors. Tell him what you don't like. Not that he'll change it. Would you change it, Father?
Well, we do
Consider,
sometimes.
right?
We do sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, right. Today,
Well,
how
well.
we know you're happy at Cooperville.
Oh,
But
yes.
you never stop smiling.
No, I've been here for 14 years plus now, and I'm very, very happy, and I wish I could continue. Maybe till I retire or die, whichever comes first, I must say.
We hope it's the retirement.
Well, I hope so too. But anyway, and I also want to thank Shan Moore, or Suzanne Moore, for doing such a beautiful job.
Yep.
Thank you, Father. I've been having a great time.
All right, now, tell us a little bit more about the book now. You still have memorials available and so forth. Tell us about that one more time.
Yes, it's time to get your memorial or your pre-publication order for the book in, because we are going to print very soon, and you may lose your chance. We are asking for a minimum donation of $5 to include a memorial in the book. A minimum donation of $10 will get you a memorial entry and a copy of the book. We just need to have you make the check out to St. Joseph's Church and send it here. Father, what's the street number?
74 Mason Road, Champlain, New York, 12919.
Okay.
And please write very, very clearly
Or print.
who your
Yeah.
print, who the memorial is for, in memory of whomever, and then your name, and we will have the books hopefully for Christmas.
And when they will pick up their own book, you won't be mailing books because that's expensive.
Right.
Is that right?
We will ask people to come. We'll set a time and date, and people can come pick up the books, or people who go to Mass here And it would be nice to have some guests for Mass.
Okay.
Come to a Mass at St. Joseph's and pick up your book on the way out.
There you go.
There. How's that for a commercial?
That's a great commercial. But remember, still give your envelope in St. Mary's if you're coming from St. Mary's, right?
Yes.
You can give him a donation here, but still bring your envelope where you belong. Chudley Fozier, earlier in this program, a person I hadn't seen for many, many years, was glad to see he and his family he said he made an error. Something you wanted to correct?
Yes, I think the excitement of being on Hometown Cable was just a little too much for him, because we were talking about when lightning struck the church in 1934 and how his sister, who was 11 years old, ran into the church and saved the Holy Eucharist. And the newspapers at the time attributed that courageous deed to Norma, his sister. It was actually his sister Ina. And so in the confusion and the excitement of the taping earlier, we had been talking about Norma, and he said Norma by mistake.
Right.
So Ina, I'm sure you'll see this eventually. Chud knows it was you, and we all know it was you, and Norma, we're sure you would have done it if you'd had the chance.
Right, and I'll say one thing, if Chudley ever wants to go to Ina and eat again, or have her buy something for Christmas, he better have corrected that. Is that correct? Are you sure that's the right way now?
Well, Ina
that it is Ina, not Norma.
It's Ina. I spoke to her, and Chud spoke to Norma, and we have it all straightened out. And Ina made a good point, though. She said it doesn't really matter who it was to anybody around here now, but as long as the man upstairs knows who did it. So.
All right. It's been a pleasure for Hometown Cable, and particularly Calvin and I. There's only one other one, and that's Sam, really, to be here at the celebration, 150th of St. Joseph's Church in Coopersville, New York, particularly for me because I am coming home. I belonged to this parish for 4 to 6 years back when I was a junior in high school and a senior, then when I went into service, and I came back until I got married in 53. For at least 9 years, I was a member of this parish, counting the time I was in the service, and it was always nice to. And I never had so few parishioners. I beg your pardon, so few families with so many people. Some of these Bayshore families were big, and the Lores were big families, and they were good church-going people.
That's
you remember that,
yes.
right?
Oh, yes.
And again, I want to thank everybody that has helped in any way for the renovation of the church, the renovation of the house, the publication of the book, the painting of the stations, like I said before, and the picnic work, and everybody in the parish that's backing me up, and especially also the parish council, because they are working with me very well.
Thank you, Father, and don't leave just because we're leaving, because...
Wait, can we tell them, a lot of people are going to want to have this to keep, and
Yes.
Can we tell them how they can
Yes, you
order
can.
a copy
Yes,
of it?
you can. Tell
Did
them.
I jump the gun?
Yes.
They can order a copy of the tape from Hometown Cable.
Yep.
The cost is...
Now, this is a $20 cost because of the different tape, Calvin? The tape stopped. We don't know why for sure. At least I don't know why for sure. So we're going to go back and say, and while we're off camera, Calvin said he will do it. Tapes, even though they're going to be nearly 2 hours and 40 minutes each, he'll do them for $15. The biggest reason in the world is because his mom was from this parish. That I would nearly said Tetros, what? The Trudeaus down on Kings Bay. Also, so we both have a lot of connection with this. And whatever you haven't heard on cable, you're going to get a little bit more, because I'm going into the picnic for nearly a half an hour. That'll be following this. And whatever hasn't been covered before or in the picnic will be covered for sure in Shan's rendition of the history of the church here at St. Joseph's.
That's right.
All right? Mm-hmm. And the books are how much?
The books...
Are going to be $5?
Okay. Well, we haven't quite... We're not
you
sure
haven't
about
decided yet.
the
Okay.
post-publication price. So,
Okay.
So if you want a guarantee of low price, you want to order now.
$5, and it's $5 for a memorial or more if you want to give to make up for the expenses. All right? Things are going good?
Things are going great.
Okay. And if there's not enough copies later, you've had your chance right now.
That's right.
Father Redpan, thank you very much for talking to us.
You're very welcome.
And
Happy to be
Father,
here.
also,
I'm very pleased to have been able to do this.
thank you very much.
And thank you, Bob and Calvin, for
Okay.
taking all this time with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. And the tapes will be available. You can check with your pastor or Shan. They'll be here at the rectory, and I'm sure you'll want to show this to your children. Maybe you have relatives out who have left the area that you may want to give a tape and a book to.
Oh, what a gift, Bob.
What a gift.
What a gift.
What a great.
Can we throw in some Ginsu knives?
Yes, and some Ginzu knife and also a vegetable chopper or
Oh,
something.
good, okay. What a gift.
Thank you very much for tuning in to Hometown Cable. And remember, every day at 1 o'clock, 4:30, 8 p.m., midnight, and 8 the following morning, you'll see up to 3.5 hours of items filmed by Calvin, Sam, and some of his volunteers. When you see Calvin, you see me, or you see Sam, tell them thank you. But thank yous only go so far. If you're not already a patron, become a patron. $12 or more once a year, or more if you want, to Hometown Cable. Everybody has to make a living and keep these kind of things coming to you. Good night, everybody, and good night.
Good night.